and I would really appreciate it if you would stop Rob Taylor from blathering on and on.
Opinions expressed by talk show hosts, callers, or guests on the Rob Taylor Report do not necessarily represent the opinions of the hosting platform, subsidiaries, sponsors, or possibly anyone else on the planet or the known universe. From the tinfoil and lead-lined broadcast bunker on the beautiful southern coast of Oregon, it's the Rob Taylor Report. So strap yourself in. Your weekly political therapy session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the nearly famous Rob Taylor.
Hey, Goose County, Oregon, America, and beyond. I want to thank you all for joining me. It's a beautiful day here on the southern coast. We don't like to show the tourist too much of what's going on here right now because it's like, I would imagine it's probably, I would say 68, 70 degrees. I don't know. I'm just guessing right now, but it is beautiful outside. There's this big thing in the sky. I think they call it the sun. Yes, I think they call it the sun. And we haven't seen a whole lot of the sun in the last couple of months, probably since October. It's been raining on the coast here, cats and dogs. That we don't want to be exclusive. And so, if this is the best time of year between now and August, and August is probably the best. Early September, late August is the best time to come to the coast. If you are going to visit, those are the days that I highly recommend. We are pre-recording this show. I've got a really good guest, and so that guest couldn't make it for Monday. So I'm pre-recording this on Friday. We're not going to be playing Where's 3H Tree Service. 3H Tree Service might be playing Where's 3H Tree Service, which is great. Hopefully they'll get a winner. And if they do, they'll give me a picture and maybe I'll announce it next week. But I've got a guest. I think it's very important that we talk about the primary. And I know many of you have probably gotten a little tired of not only just politics, but party politics. And the party that I've been dealing with mostly is the Republican Party, because we already know that the Democrats are douchebags. There's really not a whole lot that we have to go into with the Democrat Party. I've met very few Democrats that I have hardly any respect for anymore. And so, we already know the Democrat Party is a bunch of douchebags. And so you have to look at the other party, the alternative. And if you didn't want to join a third party, the Green Party, the Socialist Party, or the Libertarian Party, which I like the Libertarian Party, or the Constitution Party, I like the Constitution Party. But the thing is that they're minor parties, and you're lucky to get 1% of the vote from those parties. And so their candidates almost never have a chance to actually go into office. And this is a primary, so only the major parties, the two major parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, are allowed to participate. I think it's kind of very exclusive that this happens, that only the two major parties are allowed to participate in the primaries. I think it's a form of political welfare. That's the system we've created. And so that's why I've been spending the last, I would say, 6 months really hammering on the Republican Party, because I think it needs reform. I think I'm going to bring my guest on. I don't think my guest even thinks that the party just isn't reformable, and there is no redemption for the Republican Party. It's just a lost cause. And in many ways, I agree with my guest, but I am part of a group who are Republican Party reformers, and we're trying to change the situation in the state so maybe we would have a viable Republican Party that people could respect again. I know it's a or middle challenge, but we're going to take it on. And so I'm going to bring on my guest right now. He's someone that all of you know. It's Kevin Starrett from Oregon Firearms Federation. Kevin, how are you doing?
I am doing very well, Rob. Thank you.
We're recording this Friday morning. It's not going to play until Monday afternoon. And you have been watching the scenario that's been playing out in the primary. And as I'm sure you heard me talking about the Democrat Party. Why even bother talking about them? There is no saving that party. They're a bunch of communists. And all we have left as far as major parties is the Republican Party. And what has been happening in this primary has blown my mind. It's almost like they're self-destructive. They look like one of those crazy people out in the street, strung out on fentanyl, who's either attempting suicide or trying to OD, which is the same thing. Is that just the state of Oregon? Everyone's just in a very self-destructive part of their mind, and that's what the Republicans are doing.
Well, certainly, having been involved in politics for a very long time, 4 decades now, I can tell you that I really haven't seen anything quite like this. As far as Republicans are concerned, there are people who are professional political hacks in the Republican Party. And some of the things that they've been doing have been so astonishingly amateurish, so ham-fisted, so transparently bad that you wonder why people still pay these clowns. And it is extremely bad. I mean, what we're seeing right now is a handful of people who largely control the Republican caucus, who are grifters, who are absolute dirtbags. We're talking about the Knopes and the Iversons here, and their acolytes, Christine Goodwin, David Brock Smith. But what they're doing has been so incredibly juvenile that I'm a little surprised, because both of these clowns have been around for a while. And obviously, look, in politics, there's all kinds of games that get played. We know that. People create fake organizations and hammer their opponents in ways that are despicable. But sometimes it's usually done a little bit more professionally. And in this case, what we've seen from these people has just been astonishing. I mean, what they've done is to cover the butts of some really bad legislators like Christine Goodwin, particularly Christine Goodwin. They created an organization that really is 2 people, Tim Knope's son and Vicki Breeze Iverson's staffer. And they made up a name. The website was Oregon Gun Rights, and the PAC's name is Gun Rights First. And it's nothing. It's vaporware, so that Christine Goodwin could claim the endorsement of a gun rights group, which actually doesn't exist. And now, of course, comically, but not surprisingly, David Brock Smith is too. And they may as well be just touting the endorsements of the National Rifle Association, which, as you know, typically for years has endorsed anti-gun candidates. And in fact, they endorsed Charlie Conrad, major anti-gun candidate. They gave an A rating to Goodwin. I believe they endorsed David Brock Smith too. These are people who are, their goal and the goal of the Iversons and the Knopes is to please the lobby and make sure that everything remains under control. What they want to do is make sure that everybody who gets into office will play along, do what they're told, not walk out, give lip service to conservative values while guaranteeing the Democrat bills pass. And that's what the whole goal of the Republican caucus leadership is. It has been through Drazen, then Iverson, then Helfrich, is we don't rock the boat. We can't win. We'll complain about not being able to pass good legislation because the Democrats are controlled, simultaneously take credit for the great bipartisan bills we passed, and oh, look how much money I brought into the district. But all the time making sure that any kind of disruption doesn't take place, and that anybody who might be a disruptor is going to be attacked and silenced or criticized or insulted. And I mean, there's a flyer that the Iversons put together to attack Noah Robinson, who's running for Senate seat. The most disgusting, despicable reprehensible thing I think I've seen in maybe 40 years. Not only is it disgusting and beneath contempt, but it's also all lies. I mean, just blatant, flat out lies. And what's interesting, of course, is because of our elections laws, they put their name on it. You know, Vicki Iverson was responsible. Iverson and her son, her husband, were responsible for putting out this despicable collection of lies attacking Noah Robinson, because it is in their best interest to promote Christine Goodwin, who will continue to play the game that the lobbyists want, take credit for things she hasn't done, act like she's a tough supporter of all our rights while doing nothing to defend them. And as I said, this kind of stuff is nothing new in politics. What's different about it is how badly it's been done. So now we've exposed this group, Oregon Gun Rights, and one House rep, Dwayne Yunker, has contacted him and said, I don't want to be endorsed by you. I want nothing to do with you. Take me off your website. And they've said, no, we're not going to do it. And then oddly added at the bottom of a tweet, where they reproduced his letter asking to be removed, and then said, well, he hasn't asked for an apology. It's just very strange. You know, the Knope and the Iversons are, they really truly, they define the word grifter. That's what they are. But it's just been astonishing how juvenile what they've been doing. How it's like not even the slightest bit professional.
I've got Representative Younker's statement on the Oregon Gun Rights Group, and he talks about how today Representative Dwayne Yunker responded to the questions about a new website launched last month, and he says, this is his statement, I am not affiliated in any way with the website OregonGunRights.org. I did not ask them for an endorsement or to be featured on the site. And yet you would think at least they would respect his wishes as a fellow Republican and take it off. But like you said, then they sent out this tweet on X. I don't know if you call them tweets on X anymore, but literally saying that, too bad, we're going to keep you. You're one of our dominions. And this was a tweet that was originally put out by Ben Edel exposing the corruption and putting out Junker's letter. And then Oregon Gun Rights retweets it saying, well, too damn bad, we're going to keep you. And that's just the way it's going to be.
And they're really, they are a nothing organization. They aren't really an organization. In fact, Goodwin was claiming their endorsement before they even existed as a PAC. And as a PAC, they are two people. They are, Reagan Knope and this gal who works for Iverson. And if you look on the secretary, and of course, we're recording this on Friday. Great. We're recording this on Friday. And by Monday, who knows what could, when this is aired, who knows what could happen. But as of now, if you look at the Secretary of State's website for their contributions and expenditures, they have exactly one transaction. That was Reagan Knope contributing money to Reagan Knope.
Literally.
Like, could we do a slightly better job of scamming people? And apparently they can't even do a decent job of scamming people. And it's, my hope is that the word gets out. Obviously, a lot of people have already voted, but people need to know that the cabal of people who are largely controlling what goes on the Republican side of the House and Senate in Oregon are essentially people who just, they're in it for a buck. Certainly the Iversons, when Vicki Iverson was the House Republican leader, her job was to recruit candidates. Well, her husband's job was to run candidates' campaigns. And guess who, where the money was all diverted to.
Right.
And then, of course, Brock Smith, another grifter who brags about, oh, look, I got $100,000 for the Southern Oregon Children's Foundation, failing to mention that the Southern Oregon Children's Foundation pays him between $24,000 and $40,000 a year to do what he claims are 10 hours of work, which is laughable anyway. The question is, will there be enough reach? Will the truth get out about these people? Obviously, the lobby has a lot of money, and the lobby can afford to pay for a lot of signage and that kind of thing. How many election cycles it will take to expose these people remains to be seen. But certainly, in Josephine County, the Republican Party has flat out endorsed Noah Robinson because they recognize that Christine Goodwin is a fraud and a scammer. That's incredibly unusual. The Oregon Republican Party and its subdivisions and counties have very rarely done that. I know I guess it's Lane County, where Charlie Conrad, a screaming leftist who, of course, was endorsed by the National Rifle Association after voting for gun control. The party there has said they want him to resign. They're primarying him. And in Clackamas County, the party almost voted to endorse James Heed over Christine Drazen, and that failed by one vote. I've been told they're not endorsing anybody, but it's certainly progress when the party is starting to tell the truth about people who are candidates using the Republican name, who stand for nothing except promoting Democrat bills and lining their pockets.
That is exactly the battle that's going on within the party. I was at the central committee, the state party central committee meeting when they were repicking their actually not delegate, national committee person for Washington, D.C. They go up and they represent the national party on a national level. They represent the state on a national level. And for years, we had Solomon Yu, who you know as well as another grifter. And we finally got rid of him. And, and I say this we as in a very short distance because I've only been in the party since I think it was March that I re-registered as a Republican, and I only came in to be a reformer. I only came in to be someone who is going to work to change the party or die trying. And it was very satisfying to see Solomon Yu finally get replaced. But even during that whole event where in the election, they had 4 candidates. The first round, Don Powers won, and that was the candidate we were supporting. And he got the majority of the votes, overwhelmingly the majority of the votes. And then in the end, the guy who came in third came in first because Solomon Yu quit the race, retired before the second round, and asked everyone who voted for him to vote for Dan Mason, who actually won. And whether that's a good thing or not is still yet to be seen. But the fact that Solomon Yu played one of those tricks at the very end kind of proved a point to all of us who had been saying he was a grifter. And that's just the first experience I had with the Republican Party from coming back. Can you believe that?
Yeah, this is nothing new. I mean, look, I've had this conversation with a couple of people recently who I have a great deal of respect for, who work in one capacity or another with the Republican Party. And for a long time, and I've made this point in the past that I think you've been in places where I said this, where I was at a meeting of prominent conservatives whose discussion was, we're going to make the Republican Party a true conservative party. And there was a lot of passion there, and it was very exciting and uplifting. And it was 30 years ago. And really nothing's changed. I think the Republican Party is certainly in Oregon, but to a large extent nationally, is institutionally corrupt. It's never been what conservatives have this nostalgia for that really does not exist. I grew up in New York, and in the 60s, actually, oddly enough, my father was one of the people who started the New York Conservative Party because they were so disgusted with how liberal the Republicans were. I mean, this is the party of Nelson Rockefeller and all kinds of other far left people, and John Lindsay, and now, of course, Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell. The Republican Party has probably never really been what we wish it was, in much of the same way that, for people like my age who grew up with the defining experience of the Vietnam War and thinking we were fighting this great battle for freedom. And in fact, really what we've been doing for generations is enriching the military-industrial complex, which is what we're doing now in Ukraine and Israel, funding both sides of everything. Those people are getting rich. Joe Biden is saying it's great that we are spending billions of your children's dollars to arm Ukraine because the bombs are being made in America. Now, that was inadvertent buffoonery, but it really told a story. everything that both parties have done forever is to enrich this cabal of people who make money off killing people. So I think it's a mistake to have this sense of nostalgia for a Republican Party that never was. But the reality is, as you pointed out, third parties, for whatever reason, have really had trouble getting traction nationally. And so until there's a workaround for that issue, and I wish there were, we're stuck with the two major parties. As you said, I mean, if you're not in one of the parties, you really don't get to vote in the primaries. And that may be a good thing too, because in a lot of places, like, for example, in Idaho, which is solidly Republican, people run as and register as Republicans who are screaming leftists and then go in and dilute everything. And in Idaho, the party and the people are more aware of it, and they're doing things about it. There's a problem no matter who's in charge. But the fact is that the Republican Party, and this adoration that people have for Abe Lincoln, every county has their Lincoln Day dinners. Well, Lincoln was a screaming racist and a tyrant who imprisoned people who disagreed with him, who shut down newspapers who were critical of him. So there really is no core, pure Republican Party that we need to reach back to and try to regain. We have to do something with what we've got. And in Oregon, what we've got is a massive number of real dirtbags who weasel their way by pretending to promote conservative ideology, and then sometimes not even doing that. I mean, remember when Newt Buehler was a House rep, he was, quote, a Republican, but legislated like a leftist.
Yes.
Then he decided to run for governor, where he needed the votes of Portlanders, and he was marching in the Gay Pride Parade and talking about how much he hated Donald Trump. When he failed at that, he decided to run for Congress in a conservative district, and he was a born-again conservative, portrayed himself as a conservative Republican, and boy, Donald Trump was his best friend. Then when we got him out of that, he was back to hating Donald Trump. And the problem is that at no point did the party ever come out and say, look, this guy is not a conservative, he's a fraud. We don't get to pick the candidates, but you get to know what he's really about. And we see this all the time now with candidates. I mean, why are people who stand for nothing being able to run and say, I'm the Republican? Christine Drayson, okay, voted twice to put tampons in little boys' bathrooms, voted to change the state song because it had the words free men in it, voted to protect Antifa, voted to hurt our cops, tweeted guilty justice is served when Derek Chauvin was falsely convicted of murder, celebrates this crap from the left, and yet is allowed to run as a Republican. Well, maybe there's nothing that can be done about that. But what could be done is the party could be saying, as they're doing now in Josephine County, God bless them, is saying, this is not our candidate. How long it'll take for that to have a positive effect, look, we'll see. But the fact is that the values that people like you and I share are not reflected in the Republican Party, and certainly on a national level. Look, Oregon has 2 Republican congresspeople. Both of them vote regularly to advance the Biden agenda. And there's always an excuse. There's always a reason why we have to do it. It's like a junkie. I'm going to get clean tomorrow. We voted for another destructive budget bill because, well, we have to. We're going to clean this up later. But right now, we can't have government services shut down. And we voted to reauthorize FISA. Both of them voted to reauthorize FISA, but telling us, don't worry, we built in safeguards, which is comical and laughable, of course, because, the original bill had safeguards. But these safeguards are going to be administered by, the FBI, those guys, who are breaking the law all the time. So you got Vance and DeRemer, who are enormous disappointments. Mercifully, our organization refused to endorse either of them when they ran. And it's always the same excuse to maintain the status quo, to keep the lobbyists happy, to keep the bomb makers happy, to keep Big Pharma happy. Meanwhile, spending our grandchildren's and our great-grandchildren's inheritance in ways that could never be paid back. I mean, billions every day we're going into debt. And and then when somebody comes along, like a Marjorie Taylor Greene, who says, we got to put a stop to this, then she gets painted as a crackpot. She's a nutcase. And the fact is, people like her no matter what you think of their style, are the only ones telling the truth. And, to listen to Benson, DeReamer, of course, is one of the worst. Probably won't win re-election, and it will be no loss. It will be no loss at all, because the fact is that the Republicans in Congress legislate like Democrats. And they, nationally, they do the same thing. They make a lot of noise about how we're going to stop the Democrat agenda, but they don't, even when they can. And so now we have a new Speaker of the House who's endorsing people who promote illegal immigration, who's passing horrible budget bills, and they're not going to get rid of this guy. Right. And so when you have institutions that are that entrenched, the difficulty of overcoming them becomes, it's awesome. Whether it can be done or not, who knows? Maybe not. I mean, look at people for 35, 40 years have been trying to reform the National Rifle Association, which now is not speculation that they're corrupt, right? They've been found guilty of this level of corruption. And so I know a friend of mine just ran for the NRA board with the expectation that they're going to turn things around. But he and the 3 other reform candidates are just a tiny number of board members. And it's like trying to reform a mafia family. I don't think it can be done. Whether or not the Republican Party can ever be saved is anybody's guess. But the reality is think about how much worse it would be if there were not people like you and other people doing what they can to kind of get the word out. I mean, talk show host Bill Maher in Medford, another great voice for sanity and reformation of all this stuff. Do we win? And, corruption is very powerful. Probably not. But just think of where it would be if people were not making this noise.
Right. Absolutely. And that's what I look at when I was deciding whether or not, excuse me, to become a Republican again. Was it worth the time to go through this? Because it's a thankless, crappy job. It really is. It's because, and I was told recently by a mutual acquaintance of ours, Daniel Crow, and we were talking about this, and he knows many of the establishment, and he had even said to me that, Rob, you're one of the most hated people in the Republican Party. They just downright despise you. You are also one of the most hated people in the Republican. Well, you're not a Republican, I don't believe. You're not a registered.
I'm a registered Republican.
Okay, so you're also one of the most hated people by the establishment. You, me, Ben Edel. Ben Edel's at the top of the list, and I now look at that as a signature of respect. I look at that as something that I wear as a moniker. I am happy to be the person who is fighting against the establishment, to point out their corruption, to point out the grift that's going on. And in many ways, it's like we have two different factions of the party. There's many different smaller factions, but I think the two bigger factions of the party right now is the establishment versus the reformers. And you can look back when Goldwater ran against, I think it was Nixon. Wasn't it Nixon? I think he ran against Nixon, didn't he? Yeah. And when Goldwater ran against Nixon, look what they did to Goldwater. They painted him as a nut, as a cowboy, a wild, out-of-control cowboy from, Arizona. And, you look back at that, and I think what you just said is probably the most important point of this whole thing, that the Republican Party really isn't what we thought it was, really isn't what we want it to be, and never was, going back to Abe Lincoln. And I think that like my example of Goldwater kind of proves that we never really were conservatives. The party never really were conservatives. And so, it's like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And I sit there and wrestle all the time. I have long discussions with my wife, even whether this is worth it. And at a certain point, I've come to the conclusion we have to do this because they are the major party. So, that's the question. Is it worth the time? And, and I think you kind of answered that somewhat.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's worth the time in that. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's an attorney, and she, great, super genius Harvard Law School grad. And we were having the conversation about how frustrating it can be when you're facing this level of endemic corruption, because it's just part of the human spirit. And she said that to me. She goes, think of how much worse it would be if we weren't doing it. So
Right.
to a large extent, we're trying to hold back a tidal wave. And the tidal wave is bigger than you and I, because once you become part of the cartel, there are benefits. For someone like Goodwin, she gets to continue to have her office and have lobbyists come and see her and pretend that she's had some effect on things. For someone like David Brock Smith, he can funnel taxpayer money into his own pocket, which strikes me as, I can't believe that's legal.
I know.
All of these people, Brock Smith has told people, I won't walk out because I spent my whole life waiting to become a senator. And I want to keep this job. That's all that matters to these people. It doesn't, the Bill Posts of the world, people who never really were anything except, Bill Post is a guy who one time scrapped together a living by selling his possessions on eBay and managed to get elected to a House seat and said all the right things, portrayed himself as a conservative, and came to me constantly, can I have some more money, please? Because then I can be a player in the caucus, until we started pointing out what the caucus was doing. And then the attacks were relentless. And then, of course, his wife got a better job, so he left the state. I don't know if he even works at all anymore, but still desperately trying to be relevant by tweeting and putting up social media posts. But these are people who really desperately wanted to be something important. And all of a sudden, somehow they get elected to office, largely through the help of the lobby, because they promised to be complicit and do as they're told. And now they have a nice office with a staff. All their IT is handled. Parking space. I don't know if they still have parking spaces now that the Capitol's under construction, but a fabulous medical plan and lobbyists who come and kiss their ring. And so they'll complain constantly about how little money they make, when in fact they actually do quite well, but they'll never leave. So,
Right.
You'll have, and even after they leave, then they can't wait to come back. So like you get a guy like Bruce Starr, who lost his Senate race because he decided to go off to Hawaii in the middle of the campaign, lost his race to a Democrat. Ever since then has tried desperately to be a player one way or the other in politics in ways that are largely quite disgraceful. And now he's running for a Senate seat again. And Mike McLean, who quit to go become a Kate Brown appointed judge. Well, guess what? He's back in the game. They just can't get enough of it, because there's that, we've always talked about politics being Hollywood for ugly people. And that's what it is. It's an opportunity to be on stage, to be loved, to have people come and see them, and to feel like they're important. And in fact, in the case of most Republicans, they're not important. There's nothing they can do. And the only ones who actually have done anything are the ones who said, we're going to disrupt it. And what happened to them was their, quote, leadership sold them out, got them to sacrifice their futures, and then threw them under the short bus. And this is how it's done in Oregon, and has been for a long time. This is nothing new. I mean, there was a time when, you remember, we had Republican senators. We had Packwood and Hatfield. And Packwood was, a screaming liberal. As a matter of fact, people don't know this. As I've said before, one of the advantages for me, having reached official geezerdom stage, is that I remember stuff. And all these Republicans flock down to Dorchester, right? It's the place to be. And virtually none of them know that Dorchester was created to make the Republican Party a pro-abortion party. They don't know that. The people don't know when Jessica Gomez was running for governor and her campaign manager was Eileen Franklin. No one knew who Eileen Franklin was. I told people, no, that's Bob Packwood's wife, who famously left the Republican Party because it was too conservative. So this is absolutely nothing new at all. And the likelihood of us actually turning it around, well, think think of the enormity of what we're up against.
Yeah.
I don't think so. But what we can do is be a thorn in their side and expose them every chance we get. And, of course, there'll be a price to be paid for that because, they have money and they have power. But, screw them if they can't take a joke. This is what we're going to keep doing as long as we can. And the fact is that there are people who get to learn the truth because of what we do. And I hear from them. I hear from people after we send out alerts saying, thank you, I didn't know that. And all right, that's just our little part to play, but damn it, let's play it.
And it's totally my part to play. And I think we do it quite well. And I think we do it in a way that really gets people's attention because, like you just said, you got people who contact you after you send out a newsletter. In fact, I've had people contact me after you've sent out a newsletter. That's how effective you are. But when I do shows like this and I talk about the Republican Party, I also get contacted by people who thank me all the time for explaining to them why things are working the way they are working or not working, so to say. And you have to go back with that history. And I've only been in Oregon 20 years. You've been here longer than I have. And like you said, at a certain point, you've become the old guy in the room who can quote things from 20, 30 years ago that these 30 and 40-year-old people who just recently got into politics, they have no clue about. And so the nice thing is we are having an effect. I've been knocking on doors with Todd Vaughn, who is running against David Brock Smith. And we've been out canvassing, which is the hardest thing to do. It really is. In the campaign, it's really the hardest thing to do because you're out there. I mean, we were out yesterday and it was like 80 degrees in Roseburg. The first time we've had hot temperatures in a while. And of course, we've been bitching about the rain, but as soon as it gets hot, we're bitching about having to walk up to the houses, who are on the hills and stuff. But we've been doing this for, I think now a month. We, off and on, we have been canvassing. And I know there are people who've been canvassing on a regular basis because we believe that's what gets people to look at you as a candidate and actually vote for you. And Todd has been incredible. I think he's knocked on, I don't know, probably 1,500 doors now. And so we've talked directly to people who all the time will tell us, we're going to vote for you. We're going to vote for Donald Trump. We support Trump, but screw the Republican Party. In fact, we really don't even want to be in the Republican Party. They see how messed up it is. They see how screwed up it is. And yet the only reason I think they stay there is because of the status of the party. It's the one of the two major parties. The alternative, being a Democrat, is just sickening to their stomach. And so I think we are having a message, and I almost think that we are the necessary alternative to creating, other than creating another party, we are the necessary alternative, the reformists, the Republican reformists. And I don't know if you can really call us reformists because, like you said, and I agree with you, the party never was what people thought it was, but yet they're starting to see, because of the work that you and I and others have done, that the party is that corrupt. And I don't know if you see that on a major level, but knocking on the door, I am seeing that change at the lowest level, at the base, at the complete base of the party.
Well, I'm not campaigning for anything, so I don't knock on doors. My feedback comes when people call me or contact me, typically after an alert's been sent out. And interesting, I did get an email from one guy who said, hey, normally I agree with what you say, but I understand that this guy, Todd Vaughn, is his major contributor is building windmills for the Chinese. And I was very courteous. And I said, look, here's what I'd suggest you do. You've been told that. I believe that's inaccurate. Why don't you contact the campaign? So you're not getting it filtered through me. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer your questions. And, hopefully he did. But we do have the ability, tell people the truth. Most people aren't going to hear it. I mean, most people don't get emails from me. Most gun owners don't get emails from me. But whatever number of people that you can reach with the truth, with any luck, reach other people with the truth. And as we already said, the reality is that we kind of don't have a choice. You know, a lot of people get involved in politics, and I've heard from them for decades, who are disgusted with what's going on, say, I want to do something. And you say, well, here's some things you can do. And they don't last very long because it's frustrating and it's demoralizing, and you feel like I'm not accomplishing anything.
Right.
And I totally get that. But the reality is that for as long as possible, there's really no choice. There's no alternative to, we can't allow these people to keep spreading these lies and taking advantage of people completely unobstructed. And if they win, they win. And at the end of the day, you know, we don't have to beat them. We just have to fight them. And every little thing, look, I mean, the fact is that if the Republicans walk out, Democrats still have the majority. And can they control the agenda? Well, they can. In the future, will the Democrats change the rules again so they can do everything with a simple majority? Yep, they'll probably do that. But to take no action now, it's like, I remember during when Herman Bartschigger was Senate Republican leader and they walked out and they controlled the agenda. The people who were opposing it, you know, people like Fred Gerard and those clowns were like, well, if we walk out, they'll have a ballot measure to stop walkouts. I thought, well, okay, that makes no sense at all. You're not going to walk out for fear that you may not be able to walk out. And so next session, they didn't walk out. And guess what we got? A ballot measure to stop walkouts.
Right.
So now they'll take the position that, well, if we walk out, they'll change the quorum requirements. Okay, let them change the quorum requirements. Let's elect people who every time we elect them say, I'll serve one term and I'll walk out. And I'll just turn over the tables in this dump, and then we'll elect another person who'll walk out. There is no way for us to know if this kind of approach or philosophy can win because it's all speculation.
Right.
But what we do know is that the way it's going now is absolute failure, and the price is paid by the voters. While you know, candy asses like Bill Post screw things up and then leave the state, the people who are wedded to the land or their ranches or their fishing businesses who can't leave have to live with the policies that were essentially created by the acquiescence of these quislings. And so really what our job then becomes is to constantly expose them and to at least make it as difficult and as uncomfortable as possible for them to continue to basically rip off the people of the state.
Right. Right. And Bill Post, you sent me a great link that he had posted. Bill Post had posted talking about, and this is what I hear from the establishment all the time, is that we need more Republicans. It doesn't matter what their beliefs are. It doesn't matter what they're going to vote. We need more Republicans. We need, and I forget how he put it. We
don't need better Republicans. We need more Republicans.
We need more Republicans.
Purity comes later. That's the institutional philosophy of these clowns, is that it makes no difference what a person believes as a legislator. All that matters is what team jersey he has on. And okay, so Bill Post will never be a has-been, but he's relatively irrelevant now, except, you know, he sends out tweets and stuff. But the problem is that kind of idiotic philosophy is endemic to the caucus and in many places to the party. You know, you ask people who are active in the party who are not elected, you know, are not the caucus members, they're party operatives. And while more and more of them are starting to figure stuff out, for many of them, if you ask them, and I've done this, you say, what is it that you do? You know, as a party official, as a party committee, a county chair or something, what is it that you do? And when they can't answer at all, it's like, well, we promote Republican candidates. You say, well, but does it matter what they believe? Well, no, they're Republicans. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with a county chair who I actually had kind of high hopes for. and said, don't you think that it's your job as a party leader to identify which of the candidates actually reflect the values that the party purports to stand for? And he said, no, this is not our job. That's the voters' job. I said, well, wait a minute. People like you and I spend pretty much all of our time paying attention to what's going on politically. And we can remember stuff, and we have people we can reach out to saying, hey, do you recall this incident? The average voter, through really no fault of their own, does not have the time or the bandwidth to research every lie that's been told by a Brock Smith or a Goodwin. It then really should be the party's job, if not to pick candidates, then to say, here's the history of this person. Here's how they answered our questionnaire. Give people, some unbiased information. We're not taking a side. We're not endorsing one or the other. We're just saying this candidate doesn't, this candidate was a lifelong Democrat. Or Charlie Conrad, this is a guy who voted for sexually mutilating children. Kevin Mannix, this is a guy who in 1999 was introducing and promoting gun control bills and still votes for them today. But Mannix can continue to don this mantle of being this conservative Republican, and people buy it. People buy it because they don't know any better. Look, I had a phone call last week from a retired state trooper who I met, ironically enough, when he pulled me over many, many years ago. And we became
that happens a lot, doesn't it?
It doesn't happen a lot to me, but we still chat. Now, this guy is very, very accomplished. I mean, he not just a state trooper, he's also a lawyer. And he called to ask me about Kevin Mannix. And this is guy, he's not a young guy, he's retired. He's actually a little older than I am. Lived in the district where Kevin Mannix is, and did not know his history. This is an intelligent guy, who pays attention, did not know that Mannix is essentially a fraud, that has managed to con everybody over and over again. Say, look, people in the party, friends of you and I who are active in the party who actually think that Mannix is a conservative constitutionalist, when he really is a lock everybody up and throw away the key, sawed off kind of arrogant little man. People don't know that. I have a photograph of Mannix standing on the Capitol steps on a bright sunny day at a medical freedom rally, wearing a mask. He's just a giant fraud. But how do people know that if they're not tracking this stuff day after day? They get the ads that say, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, and the parties are not exposing them. Now, granted, the parties, the local parties and the state party and the national party, they can be corrupted, and they can then start promoting people for all the wrong reasons. And I think there's that danger. But I don't think that there's any process or any system that can't be misused. And it then becomes our job to say, all right, once that gets misused, then we start exposing those people. It's just like,
right.
We know that there are really dirty, crooked cops who do terrible things. But the job shouldn't be to say we don't have cops anymore. The job should be to say we get leadership that takes care of this crap. And then when the corruption starts to seep in again, then we get rid of those people. It just has to be that way. But right now, the party's reluctance or absolute refusal in many cases to identify who the frauds are leave the voters with little choice except to be, throwing darts in the dark.
So literally, you and I are the Serpico of the Republican Party. And at some point, they're going to let us go through the door by ourselves. I think that's what's going to happen.
Well, Rob, I don't want to take more credit for anything that,
Yeah.
I'm doing what I'm doing and have been for a long time. Obviously in years past, Oregon Firearms donated lots of money and endorsements to a lot of Republicans, some of which I deeply regret. We've made the mistake of, for all the years we've been in business, we've done things like candidate surveys. And this year I didn't. And the reason I didn't is because I've come to recognize that a candidate survey is just more lies they get to put on paper.
Yeah.
If they have a voting record, we're going to base it on that. And if they don't have a voting record, a candidate survey is only going to tell us what they want us to hear. And then if I have a conversation, an interview, as it were, with a candidate, then I'm going to have to use my best judgment to guess if they're being sincere. And then if they may be sincere, but can they hold up once they get there? And the reality is, I don't know. I absolutely don't know for sure. So we do the best job we can do. But, I don't think that, what we've done has been groundbreaking in any way. It's just been telling the truth. And in the past, obviously we supported a lot of people who now I would never support at all. But
right,
all we can do is what we can do. I mean, I had a conversation with a candidate last week who we've endorsed his opponent, and he contacted me and he's like, well, I still want to talk to you. And in the conversation, it was one of the most disturbing, soul-sucking conversations I've ever had, because everything that you and I are talking about, how people go there and they fold immediately, he basically articulated that was his plan, that my job is not to walk out. My job, by God, is to stay and fight. I said, stay and fight what? Fighting means you do walk out. Well, no, I'm every one of these people with the exact same line, reading from a script. I'm very persuasive. I've been very good at business. I convinced these people to do that. I'm going to go there, and I am so articulate that, by God, those Democrats are going to slap themselves on the forehead and say, what was I thinking, and come around to our side. It's incredibly arrogant. It's unbelievably stupid, and it's delusional. And once a candidate starts telling me that, I already know, look, this is utterly pointless. I've had this conversation over and over and over again. It's like, it's as regular as the tides, that you think somebody has handed them a script that tells them, I'm going to be bipartisan, and look, I'm really great at working across the aisle. And I was like, well, then what the hell are you calling me for? I've just seen it happen constantly. Obviously, the consultant class is telling them this is what they need to do. And in spite of the fact that for years it has been an abject failure, they still keep coming back with that. Well, we're going to engage. I had lengthy conversation with a House rep from Southern Oregon, Emily McIntyre, who told me that she wouldn't walk out because, by God, she didn't want to risk her good relationship with the Democrats.
Yeah.
And I said, you understand that these people would quite literally kill you. And by that, I don't mean politically. I mean that you would be dead and underground if they had their way. And she was like, well, yes, I understand that. But basically, I'm a Christian, and I'm going to convert them. I said, you're an idiot. You're probably a very nice person, but you should be working in a flower store. And that's true of the vast majority of them. And the ones who don't buy that crap, like the Art Robinsons and the Dennis Lithicums, get railroaded by the party so that they can keep their little jobs, so that Brock Smith can keep his seat and Dick Anderson can keep his seat and continue the con job that they've been doing and that all their predecessors have been doing.
So you have to be pragmatic to a certain extent. And this was the argument I was getting in with, this was this discussion with Crow, is that at what point does pragmatism become compromise? And then compromise becomes basically selling out your soul, because you've compromised so much, your integrity is gone. And you've endorsed two individuals, Yonkers and Hebe. And Hebe,
We endorsed Diane Lithicum as well.
Okay.
And Tom Nash and a couple of others.
Okay. Explain to him. And Noah Robinson, and which is great. I think Noah's is going to be excellent. I think he's probably going to win that, the way the party is dealing with Christine Goodwin. But let's take Hebe and Yonkers. Why? Because Hebe doesn't have the most perfect record, but why did you support him over anyone else or any other Republicans? And kind of go over why pragmatism, and to an extent, is not compromise, because compromise is the problem with the party. I think that's really, and it's beyond compromise, it's corruption. But if you know what I mean, and explain why you endorse those two.
Let me see if I understand. Are you asking me, like, why would we endorse Hebe in spite of his imperfect record,
Right.
or the fact that he's not a perfect candidate? Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't expect there's probably nobody in office who hasn't taken a vote I disagreed with.
Right.
That's going to happen. I mean, that's absurd to think that I have the perfect answer to everything. James's biggest liability is that he came to the job as an appointee, and he was appointed with the specific intention of him failing. So the Clackamas County, Tootie Smith, who was the Clackamas County chair, engineered his appointment in the expectation that he would fail. And then when he did not win the coming election after serving a short time, after Drazen, abandoned her seat, he was appointed because they thought he could never win an election. And then they could put in the person who they wanted, but that the precinct committee people wanted nothing to do with. So the minute he got into office, and having known James for a long time, James is not polished. He's not a great public speaker, but he does have really good principles. And he really does strongly believe in the core values that you and I share. And that being said, he's certainly taken some votes that I've been very strongly thought were terrible mistakes. But as soon as he got there, the Republican caucus basically came to him and said, "We hate you. We're going to do everything we can to destroy you. We're going to primary you." And they've done that consistently.
Right.
Well, then, after he spent 2 weeks in the legislature, took one vote, which was a very bad vote, because he really did not understand. He was voting on a budget bill. Those are thousands of pages. You can't read them, but you don't have to read them. It's a Democrat bill. You vote no. It's simple. He misunderstood what was going on in that bill, and I think he regrets having voted for it.
Yeah.
But he comes into the job with every handicap, and the people who are supposed to be on his team promising to stick a knife in his back and doing everything they can to do that and undermine him in any way. In that respect, he had no real mentoring, no help. And look, it's a complicated job. You get thrown a million different bills, and as we've learned, if you expect the caucus staff to honestly tell you what's in a bill, it probably isn't going to happen.
Right.
You can't read everything completely. So the thing about James is that I absolutely believe that he has completely pure principles. He does take votes that I would disagree with, but one of the things about James is I can get him on the phone and say, "Hey, this was stupid." But when you are given a choice, and okay, so I don't believe there's a Democrat in that race at this point. So it's him or Christine Drazen.
Right.
In that case, if it were two mediocre candidates, we wouldn't have gotten involved. But he's running against a person who can do such incalculable damage that Drazen, people who know her from the district despise her because they know she is manipulative, conniving, self-serving liar. And she's managed to really control the people in the caucus. Her winning that election would be devastating in a situation that's already very bad. So from the sense of, was it pragmatic? Well, do I think James is the perfect candidate? I don't. Do I think there is a perfect candidate? Probably not. I don't think there is one. But what he is someone who is not full of himself, who is approachable, who you can sit down and say, "Here's why I disagree with the position you're taking." And remember, he's constantly going to have people in his ear telling him, "You got to do this, you got to do this." And
Right.
It's very difficult when you get there to try and weed through all that stuff. And especially if you make the mistake of trusting any of these people, which I've repeatedly warned him about, not to trust any of them, you're going to make a mistake. And certainly in one case, the budget bill he voted for, I think that was a mistake. He voted against a tax bill that he now says he wish he voted for. I think that's a mistaken position. I think he did the right thing voting against it. But he's also up against an absolute tidal wave of corruption in that place. And he's done remarkably well considering. And,
Right.
he made a big mistake during the election. He did something stupid. He wound up getting arrested for it. No charges were eventually filed. He looked terrible. I believe that he genuinely was horrified by that and learned a great lesson from it. What he's not is in the pocket of the pharmaceutical lobby.
Right.
And if I can get a whole collection of unpolished, imperfect candidates whose principles are sound and who occasionally make mistakes over slick, paid for, manipulative, lobby owned liars, you can imagine which one I'm going to take.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And as far as Dwayne Younker's concerned, I mean, Dwayne has been an interesting guy. He got appointed too. He got appointed to fill the seat that Lily Morgan abandoned. And so we're fine to see Lily out of there. But what has Dwayne done that's really gotten my attention? Well, he's put out newsletters that say things like, the Democrats are laughing at us. The guy gets it, and he's unafraid to say that. He's unafraid to confront the cartel Republicans and the lobby and everything else. And so, I don't know what
the fact he put out that notice against the fake gun group really scored big with me. You know what I mean? That was huge to come out against a group who's endorsing you and would really, for most unknowledgeable Republicans.
I think he recognizes that it's not a group. It's Tim Knopp's kid and the Iverson clan, and he wants nothing to do with those people. So, there are, and of course, in the case of Diane Lithicum and Noah Robinson, clearly what their races are about is a continuation of the Art Robinson term and the Dennis Lithicum term. And that's fine. And when people vote for them, they vote with the expectation that those values are going to continue. And I don't think there's any mystery about that. I believe, I don't know, I know Diane, I don't know her as well as I know Dennis, but I believe that they will continue the principles that their predecessors had. And that's it is one way to bypass this. Voters have been robbed of the opportunity to vote for the candidate they want. And unfortunately, they've been robbed of it by themselves because they voted this ballot measure in it, the ballot measure allowing them to lose control over who they get to vote for. And I think they did it largely out of ignorance. Because remember, when the Republicans walked out, the naysayers like Gerard and all these other clowns are saying, oh, the voters hate it when you walk out. They don't want us to walk out. And then to prove their point, they started showing members of the caucus a poll saying that voters hated it, which was commissioned by the Democrats, okay? After that walkout, they all got reelected, okay? The only one who walked out and didn't get reelected was Annette Bowles, who would never have won an election anyway. So the voters clearly rewarded them for standing up to defend their principles. And I had a House rep say to me, oh, Kevin, the Republicans don't think they were rewarded. So wait a minute, you were all reelected. Then the same voters, or substantial number of those voters, who reelected the people who walked out, voted for a ballot measure to prevent them from walking out. Well, what does that tell us? That tells us that the same dynamic was in play when they passed House Bill 110, where they thought they were voting to get help for junkies, when in fact what they were getting was to funnel millions of dollars into left-wing nonprofits and flood our streets with fentanyl. And now people recognize what a mistake that was, and attempts are being made to reverse it. The same thing happened with, how many Oregonians do you know who know they voted for socialized medicine? They voted for a ballot measure that says anybody can come here and demand any health treatment they want. My most in-tune conservative Christian friends in Oregon didn't even know that they voted on that.
Yep.
And of course, as far as the walkout bill was concerned, how many voter pamphlet arguments against it were filed? None. Zero. And so what did people have to go on? They saw the Union Bull about these people should have to go to work, and that's all they saw. These are the kind of crap that were being put out by that far left Marxist House rep, Travis Nelson, who will remind you constantly that he's the only elected gay black man, will put out a tweet of him marching on a picket line with nurses and then condemn the Republicans for having gone on strike. But the reality is, like I said before, the average voter does not have enough time to research all this stuff. They see the headline in the voters pamphlet, they see no arguments against it, and that's what happens. And that's why, in whatever tiny way we have an effect, we just have to keep doing this.
And to your point, I want to show you something that has been annoying, but actually is a symbol of their desperation. And when I say they, the establishment. I've got right here, I've got from David Brock Smith all last week. He sent out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I don't know where my sixth one, 6 of those cards to, I think there's 30,000 Republicans in the SD1, the Senate District 1. There's 30,000 Republicans. We estimate that that's about $200,000, what I just showed you, for him to send that out, because that's how worried he is about a candidate who's probably spent less than $30,000 on his entire campaign.
Well,
And
that hit piece that the Iversons did on Noah Robinson, that was over 10 grand. But
Right.
One of those pieces that you just held up, that you might go back to it, it's talking about Todd Vaughn, and it said he's too extreme. This is leftist talk. This is the kind of accusations that liberals make against conservatives all the time. Anybody who stands up for actual principles, who doesn't buy every lie the government tells, is too extreme. And that kind of crap from people like Smith really tells the story. What is extreme about Vaughn? That he has conservative principles? Well, apparently,
Right.
to someone like Brock Smith, he's a dangerous extremist.
Yeah, exactly. And here it was. I knew I could find it. Yeah, there he is. And Todd made the mistake of, he wanted to really get him at the news review. This was a picture from the news review, and it's the worst picture Todd has ever taken. And of course, that's the one they picked. Too extreme and no experience, which at this point, what kind of experience are we talking about?
This crap about funded by offshore wind. Look, Brock Smith has been telling people and convincing people that he's opposed to windmills. But anybody who reads his windmill bill has to go through a page and a half of whereas windmills are the greatest thing in the world.
Yes.
Windmills are going to save our lives. And then if you listen to his floor speech, it's how proud he is to have windmills coming to the district. I mean, this is just blatant, absurd lies. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, he sits down with the people from Oregon Natural Resources, does an interview saying I'm opposed to windmills, and they don't read the bill.
Right.
And that's ultimately the problem, is you have low information people who don't want to take the time to do the research. It was like when Brock Smith was saying, I didn't vote for tampons in little boys' bathrooms. Okay, sit through the hearing. Painful, I grant you, it's painful.
Right.
But sit through it, where at no point was that bill anything other than a promotion of transgenderism. That's all it was for hours, and I didn't vote for that. And then it comes to the floor after Drazen votes for it, and they vote for it again. And then they both lie about it. They both flat out lie about it. What more does it take? The problem is that, how do you disseminate that information? So if you have a bunch of lobby money, and then you've got a bunch of money from other cartel Republicans who are desperate to keep disruptors out of things, then you can afford to generate this kind of crap. And, we'll just keep doing what we can do to be, we'll be the David against their Goliath. And with any luck, maybe we'll get rid of some of these clowns.
And I did want to show this one because I promised you I had the picture of Christine Goodwin, not only endorsed by one phony gun group, but endorsed now by two phony gun groups. Yeah, explain that if you would, the Oregon gun rights in Oregon.
I'm going to try to keep it brief because it's a long story, but Oregon Gun Owners was created by a guy who used to work for what was then the State Shooting Association, and the NRA decertified the organization because of all the dirty dealings that were going on. Oregon Gun Owners was run by a guy named John Nichols, who is now dead, and his whole thing was to compromise. Contributed money to Brzezinski, contributed money to Courtney. Then they came along, and in 1999, the first year that Oregon Firearms was in business, they drafted a bill to ban private sales of guns at gun shows. When we killed that bill, they attempted a ballot measure, which failed as well. After Nichols died, the organization was basically stolen, taken over by a mercenary PAC organization called PAC West, which are guns for hire, run by a guy named Paul Phillips, who comes and testifies in favor of gun control. Oregon Gun Owners does nothing but take credit once a year by sending out a fundraising mail, taking credit for everything when they've in fact done nothing at all. So Oregon Gun Owners, up until now, has been the group that backsliding dirtbags went to create the illusion of support by a gun rights group, which is largely vaporware. And now they get two fake gun rights groups, but getting an endorsement from Oregon Gun Owners, I mean, it's comical. It's like getting endorsed by Richard Simmons. But they're not as destructive as they used to be because they kind of do nothing, but they don't do anything positive. It's all a big charade. You will see people like Goodwin, who's got a nice silence 22. I see there. I know why she has no ear protection. And so they can go. PAC West they're a lobby group. They want to keep the status quo. They want to keep things from being disrupted. They'll put their stamp of approval on any dirtbag who doesn't actually stand for it.
And that's what we have going on. I just had to put that up there because, like you said, and she has this nice 22 with the suppressor on there, so she doesn't have to wear her, because she don't want to mess up her hair. She's got that nice hairdo going, and so
she got the camo. She's rocking the camo. She's got the 22 pistol. She's got. This is desperation. And when you get endorsed by Oregon Gun Owners, it is because you truly are a dirtbag. I don't know if they actually pay cash for that endorsement or if the lobbyists say, okay, this is just somebody else. Well, let us maintain the status quo. But that is what this group is all about. And if you don't believe me, go look at their website. Go see what do they actually do. Have you got any? Can you get communications from them? Is there a way? I mean, it's a moneymaker for them because once a year it's like a sideshow, right? It's like a throwaway thing that they somehow got the name and they can hustle a couple of bucks from unsuspecting gun owners from time to time, but they actually don't do anything.
And as soon as, because it probably won't be reported, they've got at least 7 days to have to report if they paid for this stuff. Probably won't be reported until as far as they can get out as they can without being fined. Sometimes they don't even care if they get fined, but we'll be on top of that because if they did give money to PAC West or to Oregon Gun Owners, we will report that. Because I think I
very much doubt that you'll see a transaction where they gave the money because they don't really have to give the money for their endorsement. What they do is their lobbyists then go to these legislators and say, this is what we want for this bill. So no money is going to change hands. But if Paul Phillips goes to Christine Goodwin and says, hey, back off on this bill, that's what she's going to do. Because the lobby's powerful and then they get to funnel money from their clients. PAC West says to one of their clients, it's funny, go to PAC West website and see who their clients are. And then see if you believe this is actually a pro-gun organization. It's just one fraud after another, and the price is being paid by the voters.
Now, one last thing I want to cover before I get you out of here is, do you know the judge, Jesse Margolis?
I do not.
Okay, there is actually a recall going on. It says he's dishonest as a judge, and they said that he's incompetent, he's dishonest, and they have he has been overruled on appeal dozens of times because he improperly separates children from parents, allows violations of attorney-client privacy, and warrantless searches of people, cars, and home, overlooks and ignores critical case evidence, makes speculative findings without evidence, improperly finds people mentally incompetent, makes basic errors regarding rights, and much more. And so I was just curious because I have nothing, I don't know anything about this, but because of the way the judges are literally face no challenge in Oregon, I almost am going to support this recall if I would have had a chance. He's not in my district, but I thought it was interesting.
Knowing nothing about it, I'd support it myself. But here's something I want to throw out to you, and I wish I could take credit for this idea. I cannot. Somebody emailed me about this earlier in the week, and I promised that I would follow up. This is the perfect place to do it because with you and with people who are watching, any political activists, here's an idea who haven't had an opportunity to check the legality of it. But knowing that we have almost never have a choice in judges, that judges are appointed, they're selected, they're not elected. What if we were able to pass legislation, maybe probably by ballot measure, that said any judge that's running unopposed, your ballot would have the option to vote no. So if it's just someone like Jim Egan, we'd have the option to say, we don't want this guy. And then they have to go back to the drawing board and we have to get more candidates. I don't know how practical it would be. I know ballot measures are really tough, but I love the idea. I plan to float it to everybody I know who's involved in one way or the other. But if we can't get people to step up and run against these guys because of fear of retribution, maybe we can have the option of saying, no, I don't want one person who was selected by Kate Brown or Tina Kotek or John Kitzhofer. I don't want another far left, Marxist judge who's going to come in there and judge things based on their politics, like Karen Immergood or Heidi Moawad in Portland. I think that's something I would like to pursue and bounce around with the activists in the state.
I like that idea. I actually like that idea because maybe we could get more choices. Is it true that Egan that would be considered a statewide office because of his court? And isn't that he's a Republican? Wouldn't that make him the only Republican in a statewide office?
I don't think he's a Republican. I know for a fact that he parties with far leftists. Because I talked to far leftists who party with him, who told me, at cocktail parties with him with far left Democrat groups, who told me that, he thought it was interesting that, we had pointed out what a fraud he is and what he's done and that, a hateful, racist guy. But he is absolutely not a Republican. I don't want to know what he's registered as, but I do know that he parties with far left Democrats from Portland. So he can say whatever he wants to say, but the guy is an absolute unremittent bigot.
One of the other activists on our side of the this wing of the Republican Party also put out the idea of writing in Tyler Smith for that office as well. And not that he has a chance in hell, but I thought it would be an interesting.
Well, we put that out ourselves. We put out the suggestion. Tony Aiello put out that suggestion. We put it out. And I will tell you, based on the responses I got, Tyler's going to get a lot of votes. Yeah. Obviously, we don't expect him to win, but he is going to get a lot of votes. And I think that would be something we'll continue to recommend. And, who knows, maybe a little bit of a message will be sent. I kind of don't think Tyler wants the job. But it doesn't matter, if he wins, he's going to have to serve.
That's right. We're going to force him. Yes, he will get. We'll get that wild army vehicle he drives. That army looking. What is that? Hummer. Yeah, he has that huge Hummer.
I think he sold the Humvee, but he was taking that to work, and it was a military Humvee.
Yes, yes.
He actually drove by my house one day. And I had some guys working there it was after the ice storm, and there were guys taking down trees. And he drove by the house, and he stopped, and we were chatting. And then he drove away, and the guys who were working on the trees were, wow, that was really cool. I said, yeah, that's actually my attorney. And they were just dumbfounded.
He's an operative and an attorney on his side. Yeah. Hey, before I get you out of here, is there any final word you want to tell the listeners before we go?
Just keep an eye on our website. It's where the alerts are posted. And if you don't want to have to go back regularly, you can sign up to get our alerts directly into your inbox. It's free. We don't spam people. And it's just a way to keep informed about what's going on in a state that's largely disintegrating as a result of people who are pretending to be on your side.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it, and we'll get you back on. And when something else happens, because it never stops here in Orkin. It never stops. When they'll start door-to-door searches soon for those ghost guns. That'll be the next thing they do. But I want to thank you for being on.
Appreciate the time.
All right. You take care.
You too.
All right. That was Kevin Starrett. I always enjoy having him on. And like I said, this show, if you're watching it on Monday, it was recorded on Friday morning. I thought it was important to have Kevin on before the primary. And I think that was probably the most beneficial to you as conservatives, as Republicans who are registered Republicans. This is the primary. This is how the state has decided to conduct itself. And the state has a lot more control over the parties than you would imagine. Excuse me. The lady who runs Oregon Fight Club, her name is Christine Bueller. And I was talking to her a couple of days ago. We were discussing how the parties operate in other places. And there are states where you have to pay to be a member of the Republican Party. And there may be a good reason for that, because here we'll just take anybody in the Republican Party. And if you actually had to pay to be in the Republican Party, maybe you would have better people in the party, because who would want to join a party or pay to belong to a party that's as dysfunctional as the Oregon Republican Party? And not only just the Oregon Republican Party, but many of the different counties around the state, such as Douglas County, Coos County, and Curry County. They are basically the county level. They're dysfunctional as well, and that goes for a lot of different parties across this state. And you'll have to decide whether your county party is dysfunctional or not. Like Josephine County, their party kicks ass. I've met the leaders of the Josephine County party, and the lady who's the person who's the chair and the person who's the vice chair. And I've talked to them, and those are good people. Those are really good people. And I would be happy to go to a Josephine County party. And if you notice, they're one of the few parties I get notices from of different events that are happening in Josephine County, because the party is functioning. Right now in Coos County, we have a dysfunctional party. We have a guy who's running it. His name is Rod Schilling. And Rod Schilling we call him the shill, because he is shilling for the establishment in the state party. And he is shilling for bad candidates who are, as far as I'm concerned, they're corrupt, they're compromised. And I'm talking about Dick Anderson. I'm talking about Senator David Brock Smith. Both of those people, as far as I'm concerned, they're either corrupt or compromised or just completely incompetent. You decide which. I think a little of all three would fit the description of both of those senators. I'm not happy with Boomer Wright, who represents northern Coos County. I'm not happy with Court Boyce, who represents southern Coos County. I think all of them that I just mentioned are in this good old boys club, and it's time to get change. And as Kevin said, I'd rather have someone with no experience but has principle than someone who has a lot of political experience and goes to Salem and tries to work with the Democrats to not only, and they do things like try to get money for our counties, but then they have to give something up. That compromise always comes with something. And you've been around long enough. Every time you see them compromise on the federal level or the state level, when you see the party or Republicans compromise, it always goes to the left. It never comes to the right. Our compromise is we give up something and the Democrats get something. In fact, I wouldn't even call that a compromise. I would call that a surrender, and that's the party. And so we have to consider, do we want to send people who are pragmatic to Salem? Because you have to distinguish between people who are pragmatic and people who are compromised, because they are compromising with the left to the point where it's not even worth having them in office. And that's where we're at, because I'm willing to send someone who's a pragmatist to Salem, who's going to make some bad votes. But then when you send someone who is compromised, like David Brock Smith, who's actually going to write a windmill bill like HB 3375 that facilitates and fast tracks the windmill projects, and then comes back to our district and says, oh, no, that bill is actually going to stall the project, literally lying to us, and then telling us that he has always been against wind energy and he is against the Biden's green energy policy, which was all bullshit. He lied. He completely lied to us about that. And it doesn't matter whether we win or lose in the primary, because David Brock Smith is facing a challenge. It really doesn't matter whether we win or lose. What really matters is that we continue to fight. You don't lose as long as you don't quit. And I'm not a quitter. I'm not giving up. I'm not going anywhere. I've lost a lot of the battles, a lot of political battles. And just because you win the battle doesn't mean you are going to lose the war. I'll give you a good example. In Vietnam, when America fought the North Vietnamese lost every single battle against America. But they didn't lose the war. America, for all intents and purposes, we lost the war. We won every single battle over there, but we lost the war. So that to me shows you that you can take losses, and yet in the end you'll still win, and that's where we're going. I think Kevin Starrett making the point that the Republican Party never really was what many of us believe it was, and we can go back to Abraham Lincoln, the man who founded the Republican Party. He was a tyrant. He was a racist. I believe he even owned slaves. I'm not sure of that, but I do believe Lincoln even owned slaves, or his family owned slaves. So the man wasn't a saint. And, you know, he gets credit for saving the Union, but at what cost? But at what cost did he save the Union? And so that's where we are today. I won't go over the good or bad of having the Civil War, because I do believe that things just are going to happen in fast that you just can't change. That's an absolute fact. And so I'm going to continue to fight in the Republican Party as a reformer, and I hope all of you out there who are listening are also going to join this reform movement. And that may not be a good term, because like I said, the Republican Party may never have been what we thought it was. But if we can't reform it, we've got to change it to actually being a conservative party, a more libertarian party, a party that's based on maximum freedom for the individual and minimum amount of government. And if you look at Abraham Lincoln, he expanded the government and limited individual freedom on a huge level. So the Republican Party never was what we believed it was. But that doesn't matter. We can still change that. And it doesn't matter if we lose a lot of these battles, because we may be able to win the war. So those are just some thoughts that I want you to take back with you. And I hope that, this is going to be aired on Monday. I hope all of you have voted. I hope you have voted for Todd Vaughn. I hope you have voted against the tax levy. I'm opposed to that. And if you want to see where I stand on the different choices on the ballot, go to last Monday's show. I did a whole show on what I was supporting and why I was supporting it. I want to put some things on the screen right now. This is the No Windmills sign, and underneath the sign is the Facebook page, Oregonians Against Wind Turbines. If you go to that page, or you go to my website, robtaylorreport.com, you will find on the blog page of robtaylorreport.com, you will find that I have put up a section or a post that deals with BOEM and a 30-day public comment period and a 60-day public comment period. And those are happening right now. And you need to make public comments on BOEM leasing those areas. And we're going to be talking more in detail about that in a coming up show. There is going to be a meeting I might as well check out that meeting right now. Let's see. There is going to be a meeting. Let me go to my website here. And that's happening on May 23rd. This is Thursday, May 23rd. Okay, let's see if I can share that page. This might be beneficial to everyone. I'll just share the page. Let's see. Let me pop on over there. Boom. There. Yes. Okay, so there's the page. This is from my website. And let me get rid of that. And right now, if you go to my blog page, right there's my blog page, home, contact, interviews, links, news, podcast, blog page. You can go to the BOEM, Oregon Intergovernmental Renewable Energy Task Force meeting. And this is happening at 9 a.m. Thursday, May 23rd. And if you scroll down, there's a link to the registration. The agenda is coming soon, but we're going to get a 30-day public comment period, which I believe has started. And this will give you more information. There's a lot of links in here that will explain to you what's going on, what BOEM's doing, the proposed auction details and lease terms for 2 areas offshore the Oregon coast for offshore wind energy development. And this is what David Brock Smith brought us with House Bill 3375, that fast-tracked this project. But the proposed lease sale includes 2 areas offshore the Oregon coast. The proposed Brookings wind energy area consists of 133,792 acres and is located approximately 18 miles from shore. That's an incredible amount of length to be able to transport energy from offshore in the water. And I think it's like 4,000 feet deep there. And they're going to bring that to shore. And then there's the proposed Coos Bay wind energy area, consists of 61,203 acres and is located approximately 32 miles from shore. BOEM is seeking public comments on which, if any, of the 2 leases areas should be offered in a lease sale this year. These areas have the potential to provide up to 3.1 gigawatts of power over 1.1 million homes with clean energy. Now it says, notice that last sentence, the potential to provide. They're hoping they're going to get 3.1 gigawatts. There's no guarantee on this. And so if you go through this on my website, you will be able to see all the different links that are on there that you can check out. The proposed sale notice, the proposed lease, bidders financial form addendum. You'll show you the maps. There's links to the maps, and all of that is on my website. Or you can go to BOEM. Just look up BOEM and Coos Bay and Brookings, and it'll give you some information. But this is all information that I think is very relevant to anyone who lives here in Coos County. I recommend that you get the link to this meeting. I think you should watch this meeting. I'm going to watch it, so I know I'm more informed on this. This is a very complicated and convoluted process. In fact, if you go to the link, it's very hard to maneuver where you make those comments, and I've got to make that more clear, and will be making that more clear when I do another post on this BOEM Oregon Intergovernmental Renewable Energy Task Force. And of course, they make these names very difficult, so everyone sounds like a damn fool when they try to pronounce these things. But BOEM, I personally think if this was such a good deal, then why is the government having to pay for it? Why does the government have to subsidize it to the point where that's the only way that they can do business here? And so I'm opposed to it. If you're opposed to it, go to Oregonians Against Wind Turbines at Facebook and sign up. It's a good place to learn a little bit more. We're having a meeting. This broadcast will be airing Monday night, or Monday during the day from 3 to 5. And at 6 o'clock, you can head over to the Oaks Pavilion, which is on the Coos County Fairgrounds, because they're going to be having a work session on structures in county right-of-ways. And if you live in the unincorporated area of the county and you have a fence that's within the right-of-way, this may pertain to you, and you might want to find out what's going on. This is happening 6 p.m., May 13th, and it's happening at the Oaks Pavilion, Coos County Fairgrounds. I would highly recommend you go check that out. The Coos Bay City Council meeting, oh, that already happened. Never mind. I'm going to remove that. Let me remove that. And so those are just some of the things that are going on, and I highly recommend you go check out that meeting. Like I said, we weren't able to play Where's 3H True Service on today's show because it's pre-recorded. I wasn't able to get Tim from Tom and Gigs on here because it's pre-recorded, but that's okay. I'd rather have the guest that I had on, Kevin Starrett, than to do it live, even though I prefer doing it live, and Kevin is usually able to do those type of things, but he had to work. And like I said, we've got a primary coming up. I'm not going to have time before the primary to do too many more shows, and I thought the information that Kevin gave you today is very valuable. I don't know if you read The Beacon. The Beacon is a paper that's printed in Roseburg by a man named David Jakes, and I've actually fought against David Jakes when he was working on the first Art Robinson campaign in the primary. Ironically, it was another one of those primary battles, but primaries, I haven't seen one that was nearly as bad as the one that's happening today as what happened years ago, and this was in 2008. My candidate was Janie Germond, and Art Robinson joined the battle. And of course, he won. He won very handily. And we were running against Peter DeFazio. And eventually, after Art Robinson won the primary, he lost the general election to Peter DeFazio. But he later went on to become a senator representing Southern Oregon and Josephine County particularly. And so I think he's been an exemplary senator, and I think Noah Robinson is going to do just as well. But my point is that the primaries are just tough, and so I wanted to get this show on before May 21st, because you got to get your ballots in before May 21st or on May 21st, which is Tuesday. So I'll have one more show the Monday on the 20th, which probably won't deal so much with the primary, because at that point most people have already voted, and those who are going to vote have pretty much made the decision. So that's where we'll be going with that. I do hope that you will have voted. I know it's discouraging. I know many Republicans, they're just tired of what's going on, and they don't see a value in picking up and filling out a ballot. And I can tell you, don't get that way. Don't get discouraged. Pick up that ballot and make the vote. Yes, there are a lot of dirtbags in both parties. I mean, could you imagine being a Democrat? If you were a Democrat, I first off, if I was a Democrat, I wouldn't tell anybody because I'd be ashamed, And if you are a Democrat, it must really suck to pick up that ballot and vote for the dirtbags you have to vote for. For me, it would be none of the above on every category. So, I don't know what to tell you. At least if you're a Republican, you have some glimmer of hope. There are some really good candidates out there. And I got to vote for one that I really liked for county commissioner, Chris Castleman. He's not the perfect candidate. There are no such thing as perfect candidates. And I believe that Chris Castleman would bring something different to the county commissioners. He'd bring something new. It's time to try something new. And I voted against 6123. Is it 6123? Let me see. Got my voters. That's the tax levy for the county. And right here, I got my ballot. Haven't filled it out yet, but I intend to. I'll get it in. I usually wait till the last day. It's 6213, the 5-year local option levy for Coos County. I'm voting against that. And, to me, there's very good reason to vote against that. And that's because I was a little ticked off because the last flyer that went out by David Brock Smith, that flyer right there, that just went out. Guess who's on that flyer? our very own Sheriff Gabe Fabrizio. Now, he's literally endorsing David Brock Smith there, and he's complimenting David Brock Smith for fighting against hard drugs, which David's been arrested a couple of times for pot possession back in the early 2000s. David also has a couple of DUIs on his record. I noticed the sheriff didn't mention David Brock Smith's DUIs, which I think is just absolutely disgusting that our senator is talking about being hard on our against hard drugs, but yet our senator has a couple of DUIs. And of course, here's Gabe Fabrizio, and he doesn't mention that, but he does say this about David Brock Smith. This is from Fabrizio, and this is on the 6th flyer that David has sent out because he's desperate. He's really desperate to hold on to his position. But it's the Senator David Brock Smith's effort to help our residents and communities is greatly appreciated. His work helped lead the way to the repeal reform of Measure 110 and recriminalize drug possession, giving law enforcement the tools we need to protect our residents and to help provide monitored treatment for people with addiction. And I got news for you. David Brock Smith may have been opposed to Measure 110. He may have fought against it. But the fact is that even though they recriminalized the possession of drugs, the laws are so, well, they're not even that punitive. They're not that well enforced, and I don't think it's going to make damn much of a difference. And so I personally was very disappointed in Gabe for putting his face on a flyer by David Brock Smith, because he's supporting that safety levy because it helps him get more money to open up the jail, which I agree is a good thing. I just think that the county has gone about it in the wrong way, so I'm not supporting 213. But if you're a sheriff and you do not that you are trying to pass a very controversial tax, a tax levy, a property tax levy, why would you put your face on a very controversial, compromised, corrupt senator's flyer like David Brock Smith when many of us don't support David Brock Smith, might have supported the tax levy? Why would you put your face on that guy's flyer when now there's probably people who might have voted for your tax levy, but after seeing your face on David Brock Smith's flyer might say, why would I give a damn dime to the county to help out Sheriff Gabe Fabrizio when Gabe Fabrizio is endorsing David Brock Smith? That, to me, is just another reason to vote against the tax. I mean, look at this. David Brock Smith, this is how well he spends his money. He sends out 6 flyers. Look at this. 6 different flyers. 1, 2. Whoops. Missed one. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 flyers sent out by David Brock Smith, which is probably about $200,000 he spent on flyers, which is a huge waste of money. And Gabe Fabrizio thinks people want to give more money to the government when you see David Brock Smith wasting our money with these damn flyers. Every day last week, I got a flyer. Every day of the week, except for one, because there's only 6 flyers that I received. And Gabe Fabrizio thinks that he should put his face on the flyer of someone as controversial as David Brock Smith, and then has the nerve to ask you and me, the people, the residents of Coos County, to give his department more money? Yeah, right. Yeah, Gabe, you really screwed up, man. And I like you, Gabe. And in fact, I think you're a pretty good sheriff. But I think putting your face on David Brock Smith's flyer was a huge, huge mistake. And I know it because go look at the post I've made about this on Facebook. There's a lot of people pissed off about that. And so you've got to ask yourself, when you're asking people for money, you got to be careful where who to endorse and whose flyer you put your face on. And I think that was a big mistake, Dave. But that was your choice. This is America. And I would fight for your right to put your face on any politician's flyer that you want to, but then don't turn around and expect me to give you any more money. I'm now definitely voting against 6213, the safety levy measure that's on the ballot here in Keith County. I'm voting against it. Most of the people I know are voting against it, and it's going to fail. And one of the reasons, Gabe, that it's going to fail is that you unwisely put your face on David Brock's flyer. Look at that. I just can't believe that. You know, if you want to vote for him privately, vote for him privately. But you come out and support him publicly, then you put your county's safety levy at risk. And I should have mentioned that at the last county commissioners meeting, but I didn't go. And, you know, life sometimes, you know, you can't go to every government meeting, but I go to more government meetings than my fair share. No one can deny that. But I was going, you know, and I didn't receive this until just a couple of days ago, so I wouldn't even have known about it at the last commissioners meeting. But at the next commissioners meeting that I attend, I'm definitely going to mention this, Gabe. If that tax levy fails, part of it is because of your actions, and I'm very disappointed with you on that. So, and I'll let you know, we have to let the voters decide. That'll be up to them. So I hope you do get out there and vote. I want to talk about my sponsors because they kick ass. If it wasn't for my sponsors, and if it wasn't for you, my viewing public, I wouldn't really have a show. It would just be me in the basement talking to myself, which I do that on a regular basis. And so if you want to get those trees taken out with surgical precision, get those trees removed, and you want a professional to do it, call Matt Holman at 3H Tree Service, 541-294-1800. And next week, if we had gotten a winner for Where's 3H Tree Service, if they play it today, we will post the winner and post that picture next week. I think it's important for people to see that this is actually happening, that you can win money thanks to 3H Tree Service. It's a $50 prize every week, almost every week that we play. And they also do a great job of taking trees out of your yard, removing those problem trees. Give them a call at 541-294-1800 or go to their Facebook page. If you're not sure if you want to hire these guys, go to their Facebook page and watch the videos that they put out. I mean, these guys do some badass work, and I highly recommend them. They're friends of mine. They're really good people, and they do a good job of taking out those problem trees. And that's Facebook, 3H Tree Service. Facebook page name is same as their business, 3H Tree Service. And Tom and Gigs, for all those automobile needs you have, I've used Tom and Gigs for many different situations to fix my vehicles, different vehicles. I used to have this shitty Chevy van. It was, I loved it. I loved it, but I know how Tim hated working on my Chevy van, but he worked on it and did a great job. Many times I would have to take that old beat up Chevy van down there and have to fix it because, well, I loved the van. I kept care of it. I've since gotten rid of that van, and if I still had it, I would always take it to Tim at Tom and Gigs because he always did excellent professional service. You can get them at 541-888-4660. Once again, that's Tom and Gigs at 541-888-4660. And if you need tonneau covers, you need a new muffler, you need a remote control car, one of those RC cars, or you need some tannerite, go check out Tom and Gigs. It's a very, very professional automotive shop, and I highly recommend them as well. And Herbal Choices, if you got some herbal needs, you need to get some of those edibles. You need to get a couple of J's because you had a rough day. You just voted. Let's say you just voted in the election and you had to make a choice between one dirt bag and another dirt bag. I know how it is. You might need a little bit of something to ease that situation. And Herbal Choice is really a cool place to go. At the store in Bandon, it's clean. They've got really nice clerks behind the counter to help you out. They've got a lot of great products. It's just not leafy marijuana. They've got all kinds of things. They've got CBD oils. They've got, like I said, edibles. You could buy a bong. Years ago, you'd get in trouble for saying bong on TV or the radio. And in fact, I think it was Cheech. Was it Cheech? Chong, or was it Chong? It was Tommy Chong. Tommy Chong actually went to jail for posting or putting the word bong in his advertisements, and he went to jail for that. So much for free speech. But this is why I fought against the war on marijuana. I thought it was silly. I think that marijuana is much better than alcohol, and I think people have a right to make wrong choices, and if you think it's a wrong choice for people to smoke pot, that's perfectly fine, but I think they have the right to make that wrong choice. I don't think it's a wrong choice. I think herbs serve a purpose for many different reasons. Humans have been smoking marijuana and using marijuana going back thousands of years, and we know this is because they've even found marijuana in the tombs of the Egyptians in the pyramids. They've opened up these crypts, and they've actually found herb in some of the tombs from Egypt. And so, if the Egyptian pharaohs are smoking it, then, I don't know what to tell you. But, only if you're over 18, though. I don't think anyone under 18 should be allowed to drink, should be allowed to be out there having wild sex with anyone who's over 18. I think if you're under 18, there are some rules that until you're the age of majority, you shouldn't be doing a lot of things, and smoking marijuana is one of them, but it doesn't matter because I think it's 21 or under here in the state of Oregon. But I highly recommend Herbal Choices for your cannabis needs. Great place to go, great family who's running it, and unlike Lamoda, they're not paying off your politicians. Isn't that nice? But they're much better than Lamoda. I'd recommend Herbal Choices. And Oregon Firearms Federation, we just had Kevin Starrett on the show. Kevin rocks. And if you want to find a place to put your money because you want to protect your rights, I would send my money to Oregon Firearms Federation. They're the only no-compromise gun group in Oregon. Not like those phony groups. Not like Oregon Gun... it's Oregon Gun Rights. Yeah, don't give to these phony groups. Give to the real legitimate group in Oregon. That's Oregon Firearms Federation. They're the legitimate group. They're the only no-compromise group. And they're not going to endorse people who are not going to support your Second Amendment rights. Look at the NRA. Look at the people the NRA just endorsed. I mean, like you said, Conrad from up north. Yeah, why did they do that? I have no idea. The NRA actually endorsed David Bud Smith. What a scumbag. So I would highly recommend that you give money to an organization that has a proven track record of fighting for your Second Amendment rights. And that's Oregon Firearms Federation, the only no-compromise gun group, real gun group in Oregon. If you are in Bandon and you want to hone your skills, you've got a trapped shotgun, you've got a pistol that you want to go and do some target practicing, go to Bandon Gun Club. You can get at bandongunclub.org and check them out. I highly recommend these people if you want to go and target shoot. This is a good place. They don't have a rifle range, but that's okay. They have a really good 5-stand trap where the traps come shooting out of these the slings and from all different directions, and you get to shoot them, and it's fun to make things go bang. And turn that money into noise. It's okay. That's what you do when you got to hone those skills. That's just what you do, and you can do it at Bandon Gun Club. And if you want to go to a rifle range, they have a 100-yard rifle range at Tioga Tioga Sports Park. TiogaSportsPark.org is where they can be reached at. And they've got an event coming up, the ever pin shoot. If you have an inkling to go and want to shoot some bowling pins, this would be a cool place to do that. They're having prizes given away, and this does support, or the money that is raised from this is going to go to the Lions Club. I think that's a good endeavor. This is happening on May 18th at 1 p.m. And this is coming up soon. It's May 10th, so you got 8 days to sign up. Go to their website. Once again, their website is TiogaSportsPark.org, and check out what's going on there. It's a pin shoot, folks. That's what's happening. May 18th. It's a Tioga Sports Park. So I hope you take me up on those recommendations. And I don't know if I may have to add to this recording because some things may happen over the weekend, and if I have to, I'll have an addendum at the end of this recording that it's going to be aired on Monday, because this is right now I'm doing this on Friday morning, and things happen over the weekend. If you want to come out to Roseburg, we are going to be doing a flag wave at Kelly's Corner. No, I don't think we are going to be at Kelly's Corner. Oh, shoot, I guess I should have had that address ready to go, but we're going to be doing a flag wave on Saturday. The following week, we're going to be doing a rally for the windmills. I'll have to repost that on my website where you can check that out, but we're going to be doing another one in Goose Bay and in Bandon because we want to stop those windmill projects. Not like that phony Senator David Brock Smith, who actually supports the windmills. How do we know he supports it? Because he wrote the bill that facilitated and fast-tracked the project. And by the way, if you notice, BOEM is bringing in, I just talked about this earlier, they're already selling the leases or taking offers on those leases, bids on those leases. So David Brock Smith's bill didn't do a damn thing to stop or stall this whole project, which I think is intentional. I think that's actually what he wanted. And if you go listen to his own words, there you go. You just, go to my website. You can hear it. And I'm just sick of this stuff that's going on in the Republican Party. And I'm going to continue to fight it because there's a lot of dirt